You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Friday, September 18th, 2015, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Hell yeah, welcome to the weekend. And what a great weekend it's going to be. As you can tell, I'm ready for my Boise State Broncos to rebound from their heartbreaking loss to Brigham Young University last week. It was a good game for the middle 58 minutes of it. Gave up 2 Hail Marys on the other ends of the game. So we look to rebound against Idaho State University, the Bengals, which is actually my father and mother's original alma mater. Now, they both since went to Boise State and got degrees, but they met at Idaho State University. So be an interesting aspect to watching tonight's game. But coming up on today's show, we've got all sorts of great stuff to talk to you about today. We've got Carly Fiorina. You heard her on the GOP debate, the well-watched debate on CNN that took place Wednesday, give a heartbreaking take on her daughter's death due to drug addiction. I'd like to address that in our Behind the Headlines segment that I'm going to call Carly Fiorina, Marijuana Did Not Kill Your Stepdaughter. So we'll talk about that coming up right after the news. Also today, we've got 2 different segments of our cannabis community chat. Earlier, I played my appearance on the media panel at the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference last weekend. Now I'm going to give you the other 2 people who were on the media panel. We'll start with Sid Maurer, who was the Eugene television anchor who was fired for her positive marijuana test after a fender bender. And then we'll take a break and come back with another chat. Dean Arbite, who is with Smell the Truth, which is the San Francisco Chronicle's cannabis blog. So you'll get to hear from him from that panel that I was on as well. Then at the end of the show, we'll have time for a radical rant where I am going to tell you the truth about marijuana and driving. And a quick shout out to Jacob Sullum, who writes for Reason Magazine and Forbes. He had a 4-page article addressing the Rocky Mountain high intensity drug area, trafficking areas report on Colorado legalization and calling out all of the mistakes in it. And he didn't catch the mistake I caught, and I forwarded that to him, and bless him, he went and added an addendum to the 4th page of his article and included a link back to my fact checking on the article. So thank you so much, Jacob, for the recognition. I appreciate it, and great work as always, bringing the drug war messages out to the broader audience, especially among those rich people and conservatives in the Forbes reading audience. That can only do us some good, especially as we see all these 2016 Republican candidates joust and jockey for position for their party's nomination. So we got that, but first we'll get to the 420 radio news. In the headlines today, a change of plea for the Denver man who ate an edible and shot his wife. We've got Melissa Etheridge speaking at a marijuana conference, a quick interview with her. We've got the city of Portland, my home city, discussing buffer zones between marijuana dispensaries and rec shops. We got another city in Florida that has decriminalized marijuana, and the hemp harvest at Murray State University in Kentucky. Not going to be as good as we'd like, but we'll give you the details right after this.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, what's up? It's Herb Thrasher, and you're listening to 420 Radio.
As a police officer, I walked the beat, served on the Vice Squad and SWAT team, and became an expert on drug addiction. I saw firsthand the effects of Ohio's destructive marijuana laws. Simply put, they don't work. Ohio spends over $100 million each year on this failed effort. It's time for marijuana reform. so law enforcement can spend their time cracking down on real criminals and making Ohio a safer place for our families. Vote yes on 3.
Step into the future every Tuesday night with Electric Bob's Boogaloo, our weekly electronic music jam. Electric Bob brings you the latest house, trance, dubstep, and other electronic music from the freshest DJs and producers. It's every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, with replays weekends at 11 p.m. on 420radio.org. Imagine life without taxes. Let New Era Certified Public Accountants, NewEraCPAs.com, handle your Cannabis 280E and tax strategy. Get your business prepared with New Era CPA's Cannabis Finance Bootcamp. NewEraCPAs.com, with years of experience in the industry, we are one of the nation's leading accounting firms for growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies from Washington to California. NewEraCPAs.com. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Replays of 420 Radio News are embeddable and shareable from our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/RadicalRuss. Now, the marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is your 420 Radio News for Friday, September 18th, 2015. A Denver man accused of eating marijuana-infused candy he bought at a local pot shop and then killing his wife while she described her husband's erratic behavior on a 911 call has changed his plea to not guilty by reason of insanity. Richard Kirk, age 49, is charged with first-degree murder in the shooting death of his wife, Christine, age 44, in April 2014. Defense attorneys have suggested that Kirk was so impaired by Karma Candy Orange Ginger that he may not have intended to kill her. Just before she was shot, Christine Kirk told dispatchers that her husband was acting more drunk than violent, crawling through a bedroom window and cutting his legs on broken glass. But prosecutors argue he had the wherewithal to remember the code to a locked gun safe and press the weapon to his wife's head. Kirk's THC levels were relatively low. Melissa Etheridge is a woman of many identities. She's a rock star who has made music for more than 30 years, bringing home 2 Grammys and an Academy Award in the process. She's an LGBTQ activist, frequently speaking out in favor of gay rights and marrying her partner just last year. And she's a cannabis advocate and entrepreneur, having recently launched a line of cannabis-infused wine tinctures. Yesterday, Etheridge gave the keynote address at the World Cannabis Congress and Business Exposition in Los Angeles, saying, quote, 10 years ago, I experienced breast cancer and the chemotherapy treatment, Etheridge told Fortune magazine before the address. I had the choice of 5 pills or cannabis. I chose cannabis. I was able to eat. I was able to understand what's good for me, end quote. Etheridge believes the cannabis revolution is, quote, being led by middle-aged women, adding, quote, I think women are just seeing the effects of cannabis now, end quote. Portland, Oregon is considering stricter rules on marijuana dispensaries and retailers, including a 1,000-foot buffer between locations. The city council delayed a planned vote Wednesday on marijuana regulations until September 26 after deciding more could be done to prevent businesses from clustering. City officials had been considering 1,000-foot buffers only between marijuana retailers in the same category. For example, a medical dispensary couldn't be near another dispensary, but it could be near a recreational pot store once those open in late 2016. Now officials are considering applying the buffer to all marijuana retailers, meaning any location would have to be 1,000 feet away from another store or dispensary. Marijuana businesses are already barred from purely residential areas and must be 1,000 feet from a school. Dispensary owners have to decide whether to apply for a recreational license soon. State officials won't allow businesses to have a license for both recreational and medical dispensaries. On Tuesday, West Palm Beach, Florida officials joined local lawmakers in other cities throughout the state in enacting a municipal ordinance decriminalizing minor marijuana possession offenses that occur within city limits. Under the new law, local police may cite, rather than arrest, those found in the possession of 20 grams or less of cannabis. Those persons over the age of 18 issued civil citations are subject to a $100 fine, but are not subject to criminal prosecution or a criminal record. Under state law, the possession of any amount of pot under 20 grams is classified as a criminal misdemeanor, punishable by by up to 1 year in prison and a $1,000 fine. West Palm's municipal ordinance is similar to a countywide measure approved by Miami-Dade County commissioners this past July. Other Florida cities that have recently moved ahead in favor of local decriminalization ordinances include Miami Beach, Hallandale Beach, and Key West. This fall's hemp harvest at Murray State University, the second since the federal government allowed the Kentucky universities to grow the crop, won't be a big one. By late May, Murray State agriculture students still were waiting the arrival of the key ingredients to their summer hemp growing program, the seeds. Getting them to Murray State took 2 more months, attempted shipments from 2 countries, a pair of bureaucratic paperwork snafus, and 2 of the largest delivery companies in the world. Quote, "We will probably harvest the full 2 acres, said Tony Brannon, dean of the Hudson School of Agriculture. It will not be high yielding, but we will try to harvest all of it," end quote. Although Murray State was the first university to plant hemp for research, it is not the only university. The University of Louisville, the University of Kentucky, and Eastern Kentucky University also have conducted pilot programs concerning industrial hemp. This has been your 420 Radio News for Friday, September 18th, 2015. I'm Russ Belville.
The Russ Belville Show, where we don't change our position on decriminalization in an election year.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
If you're an adult who enjoys a good beer, there's a similar product you might want to know about. One without all the calories and serious health problems. Less toxic so it doesn't cause hangovers or overdose deaths, and it's not linked to violence or reckless behavior. Marijuana. Less harmful than alcohol, and time to treat it that way. For more information, visit marijuanaissafer.org.
Oregon has joined Washington and Colorado in legalizing marijuana. We're Portland NORML, the national organization for the reform of marijuana laws chapter in Portland, Oregon. Join us as we celebrate the launch of an exciting new era in marijuana freedom in Oregon. Our job has just begun. Powerful interests want to white out the most important portions of Oregon's legalization law. By joining Portland NORML, you add your voice to the thousands who voted for Measure 91 and want it to be implemented as written. The people have spoken. Now it is time for the legislature to obey the will of the people. Find out more about Portland NORML at portlandnormal.org. Attend our monthly membership meetings on the 4th Saturday of the month. See our website for more details. Portland NORML, ensuring responsible adult marijuana consumers are afforded the same rights, privileges, and responsibilities as beer drinkers.
I very much hope that I am the only person on this stage who can say this, but I know there are millions of Americans out there who will say the same thing. My husband Frank and I buried a child to drug addiction. So, we must invest more in the treatment of drugs. I agree with Senator Paul. I agree with states' rights. But we are misleading young people when we tell them that marijuana is just like having a beer. It's not. And the marijuana that kids are smoking today is not the same as the marijuana that Jeb Bush smoked 40 years ago. We do. Sorry, but we need to tell young people the truth. Drug addiction is an epidemic, and it is taking too many of our young people. I know this sadly from personal experience.
That was Carly Fiorina, the Republican presidential candidate at the last GOP debate, and it is terribly sad when a parent loses a child for any reason, much less the preventable tragedy of drug overdose, Ms. Fiorina. But marijuana did not kill your stepdaughter. According to the account in your book, Lori Fiorina struggled with alcohol and prescription pills, as well as the eating disorder bulimia. You are misleading young people, ma'am, when you equate your stepdaughter's death from highly addictive substances and mental illness to an herb that is incapable of producing fatal overdose, even in the tiny minority of its consumers who develop psychological dependence on it. Yes, let's tell the young people the truth. It is misleading to tell them marijuana is just like having a beer, because it is far less dangerous than that. Objectively, Ms. Fiorina, in every measure, marijuana is safer than alcohol. You cannot continue to peddle this reefer madness hysteria in the age of Google and expect to maintain credibility with young people. Jeb Bush was a privileged rich white boy. I'm fairly certain he wouldn't have been smoking low-potency ditchweed back in the 1970s. Ms. Fiorina, people like you who make this potency claim pretend as if potent hashish hasn't existed for centuries. Nevertheless, through selective breeding techniques, marijuana growers have doubled to tripled the average potency of marijuana over the past 4 decades. Jeb Bush probably smoked weaker pot. What you don't understand, Ms. Fiorina, is that potency doesn't make pot into a different, more dangerous drug. You can get impaired on beer, wine, or liquor, too. The difference is in how much it takes. Marijuana, when smoked, has a distinct advantage over alcohol. Marijuana smoke is metabolized almost instantaneously by the lungs. Alcohol has to make a trip through the stomach, taking some time to metabolize. That's why, Ms. Fiorina, we have this phenomenon called one beer too many, where you haven't yet felt the effects of the first beers, you drink some more beers, and then you realize you're far more impaired than you intended to be. But with marijuana, you smoke it to get high. Jeb Bush probably took a puff, felt a little high, maybe another, felt more high, and puffed through the whole joint before he got high. Today, Ms. Fiorina, Jeb might only have to smoke 3 puffs to get high. And that means less harmful smoke in the lungs, so today's potent marijuana is something of a harm reduction measure. Look, you wouldn't down a 12-ounce glass of tequila the way you down a 12-ounce beer. Neither do responsible marijuana smokers power puff their way through 1 or 2 whole joints like they did in the 1970s. It's a waste of a pricey commodity to do so. Drug addiction is an epidemic, Ms. Fiorina, but it isn't marijuana that contributes to that. In fact, there's a good case to be made that marijuana prohibition and drug testing has incentivized the use of prescription pills and alcohol, since those substances flush from one's system far more quickly than marijuana's THC does. And certainly the recent epidemic of synthetic cannabinoids owes to those factors. People use spice and K2 because they're pseudo-legally available and their metabolites don't trip workplace and academic drug screens. Furthermore, Ms. Fiorina, numerous reports and surveys of medical marijuana patients show that they are able to reduce or eliminate their need for prescription opioid painkillers like OxyContin that are so dangerous and highly addictive, as well as marijuana being a substitute for alcoholism. Did you know, Ms. Fiorina, that the DEA has allowed for a massive increase in the production of oxycodone over the medical marijuana era, claiming that they had to produce an excess of pills so there'd be enough for both the illegal addicts and the legal patients? Did you know, Ms. Fiorina, that one of the main factors driving the recent heroin epidemic has been people whose OxyContin prescriptions have lapsed, leaving them to choose a $5 bag of heroin from the street over the cost and hassle of more OxyContin? Respectfully, as a step-parent who lost a daughter to hard drugs, and alcohol's a hard drug, ma'am, it is ironic you'd advocate for the prohibition of marijuana that only exacerbates the problems of drug addiction. So that's my reaction to the Carly Fiorina's holding up her child to try to make some point about marijuana needing to remain illegal. That is part of my column that you can read up at marijuanapolitics.com. It's available right now online. And remember, I write a daily column for marijuanapolitics.com. Usually appears at noon every weekday, as well as my twice weekly column at hightimes.com, The Radical Rant, which appears on Tuesdays and Fridays. We will be getting to the Radical Rant later on in the day, but coming up next, we've got a cannabis community chat with Sid Maurer, the fired Eugene TV anchor, and Dean Arbite from Smell the Truth, the San Francisco Chronicle's cannabis blog.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
All right, it's 4:20. If you're in the Mountain Time Zone, that means it's 4:20 for my Boise State Broncos, getting ready for their game against the Idaho State Bengals. Go Big Blue! Happy 420 to you as well, no matter where you are. I made my foray into the world of weed purchasing, so I'm going to get a chance to use the strong silicone for the first time.
This is the Russ Belville Show.
Get.Buzz. .Buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .Buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .Buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .Buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz. You're listening to 420 Radio. Listen Saturdays at noon Pacific for Medical Marijuana Radio, podcasting at medicalmarijuanaradio.com. Larry Love is reporting on the latest national news and studies concerning medical use of cannabis, with interviews of experts and policy analysis. Check our online listings for Medical Marijuana Radio with Larry Love from medicalmarijuanaradio.com. The Fingerboard extension has fretted instruments to enhance your creativity. It has new and used guitars and banjos from beginning to high class. The Fingerboard extension has National Resophonic, Husson Dalton, Larrabee, Heritage and Recording King guitars, and Mike Ramsey, Wildwood, Gold Tone, and Recording King banjos. The Fingerboard extension also has drum stuff, used gear, and parts. Stop by the Fingerboard extension, downtown Corvallis, Oregon at 120 Northwest 2nd, or check out the inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com and reverb.com. The cannabis community is a diverse set of people from all walks of life, conservative and liberal, black and white, straight and gay, rich and poor, and everyone in between. Learn more about the people we are freeing from adult marijuana prohibition in our Cannabis Community Chat.
She blogs for us at marijuanapolitics.com. Her story went viral, and KEZI's loss is our movement's gain. So please give a warm welcome to Sid Maurer.
Raise this up a little bit. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Anthony. That really means a lot. It really is very new to me still to be talking up here. I mean, I spent several years of my life pretending like I didn't even really know about cannabis that much because, you know, in the news, I knew that it was a big risk if any of my coworkers did know. I worked, as Anthony mentioned, in Eugene as an anchor and reporter for about 3 years. I got my first job right out of college. It was exactly what I wanted to do, but unfortunately it was cut abruptly short recently when I was forced to take a drug test, and like mentioned, I failed even though I was completely sober at work. And that is still legal in Oregon and in every state to be fired for that, and that's why I'm speaking out, because I disagree that that is right. It might be legal, but it's not right. Thank you. So I think that my job on this panel is to kind of give you guys a perspective on how local news approaches their stories, especially as people who are looking into going into the industry, are already in the industry, you know, are trying to get some news coverage of cool events or new businesses opening up. The way it works basically is local news is supposed to be telling the news that's most important to their community, right? So every day we would get together as a news team, whoever was reporting or anchoring or producing that day, and we went through, each of us had to come up with a few stories to pitch. It really worked that way every day. We had no idea what was going to go on at 5 o'clock, but we just picked the top stories of the day, sent people out, got interviews, and had the story ready for the 5 and the 6 o'clock news. So that being said, you know, I was posed a very interesting question in an interview I did a few weeks ago of, you know, you see, how would a news station approach the difference of maybe covering a brew fest versus covering a marijuana event? And I will say that it has so much to do with the social views of the issue. Like I said, the local news is going to be trying to give their local community the news that's most important to them. I saw this evolve just in the 3 short years that I was reporting and anchoring in Eugene, from the very early bits in 2012, kind of talking about that legislation that was maybe or maybe not going to make the ballot. And it was kind of hush-hush to talk about it in around the newsroom. And more as we saw the news of Measure 91 going on the ballot, and there were actually more newsworthy stories out there, our newsrooms started talking about it. And we thought, wow, we need to start covering this more. And sure enough, every story that we ended up doing that had pot or weed or marijuana in the title got the most clicks on our website. I know that I did a story, for instance, about some local Girl Scouts selling outside of a medical marijuana dispensary, selling their cookies in Eugene, and that was a story that it got so many views and so many clicks just because people find it interesting. So I don't think that my news station was at all in any way trying to ignore the weed stories, but I will agree that whatever's going to be the most sensational or the most interesting is what they're going to cling on to. So whether that's positive or negative, they're going to do it. And then going back to the social aspect, I think that, the problem is, what are the marijuana stories that are currently on our local news? A lot of them have to do with so-and-so pulled over, arrested with 3 pounds of marijuana in their car. So that story inherently is negative. Even if all we did was read the press release, that's a negative story about marijuana. And it's just adding one more negative story to the minds of people who are not exposed and not educated to the real effects of cannabis. So what I will say is, if you are entering the industry, or if you already currently are in the industry, or even if you're just here to kind of learn about how to move this forward, I really truly believe that it all starts from the local communities and the social perception. If you were to change the local community's perception of it, then the news will generally reflect that. The most important thing is that people who just are still very afraid of cannabis, still very uneducated about it. I mean, I had people, even though I was completely sober at work, say that because inactive THC metabolites were in my system, I must have been intoxicated. I mean, that's how people are really that uneducated to the effects of cannabis and the reality of it. So I would say, get out there, talk about it more, and try to spread the positive news, because then the local media will pay attention. Thank you.
That's Sid Maurer at the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference that took place last weekend. And coming up soon in Ashland, Oregon, will be the OMBC. They're going to lose an M. It's the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference coming up in Ashland. We'll get you the dates and all the information, of course, because we will be a part of that. All sorts of events coming up. In fact, from now until December, I have one weekend off. After this one, I have this weekend off, and then there's one other weekend off. A lot of events coming up. Check out the 420radio.org/schedule to see the calendar. Heading to Boston next weekend for the Boston Freedom Rally. Hope to see some of my Boston friends there. Stay tuned. We're back with another guest from the media panel, Dean Arbite from Smell the Truth at the San Francisco Chronicle.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org, supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor-intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from the silvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio. The cannabis community is a diverse set of people from all walks of life, conservative and liberal, black and white, straight and gay, rich and poor, and everyone in between. Learn more about the people we are freeing from adult marijuana prohibition in our Cannabis Community Chat.
He is the founder of Smell the Truth, which is the marijuana blog for the San Francisco Chronicle, so a mainstream outlet. Has seen the movement towards marijuana, cannabis issues become more mainstream, and devoted their online blog to cover all things marijuana. He does a great job for the cause, so please give a warm welcome for Mr. Dean Arbit.
Thank you, Anthony. And Anthony and Alex put on great events. And the reason is that they are super relevant. These guys, they're in the belly of the beast. They're working with legislators. They know what's happening. They know what needs to happen to move the needle. And just very matter-of-factly, most show producers are not that. So I think we should all be, let's give them a round of applause. It's a great show. So yes, we are. We're essentially indexed and partnered with a top 10 U.S. newspaper site, and the only one with a dedicated cannabis blog. So there's definitely still work to do, but also to that end, I'll tell you that we're also the only publishing partner that Hearst Media Corp made get a separate media insurance policy when we kicked off in 2012. So it's still, we've still got work to do, but at the end of the day, it's getting done. So just a couple things that I wanted to touch on. There was the panel previous to this, or before Lee, there was a little bit of doom and gloom talking about how onerous some of the legislation is and some of the regs and how fragmented things are and how things are essentially just changing at a pretty sporadic pace. That's a process. When we're normalizing, it's just part of the process. So you got to hang with it. At the end of the day, we need these regs. So I don't think it's a bad thing. Yes, you've got to be compliant, and that's part of business. It's part of any vertical, part of any sector. So at the end of the day, I think it's embracing this stuff and doing things right, and that's how media will start portraying this industry as something normal, and essentially lend it to the same type of coverage as pharmaceuticals, alcohol, other things, where the stigma seems to have sort of dissipated or not ever come on. So a couple things I just really want to touch on, again, wearing kind of the mainstream media hat of the panel. So a couple things. So one is And again, these are the types of things that media is looking for, sensational things that are going to, basically catch eyeballs. And what happened back in Colorado when Maureen Dowd had a terrible experience on some edibles and went nuts, and then wrote a massive op-ed that basically scared tons of people and really pushed a change in legislation almost instantly with packaging and dosage regulations to the medibles market in Colorado. I'll just say, and I don't know how many folks here are involved with edibles, but we see edibles as potentially a pain point. It's one where we've got to be really, really responsible as an industry. You guys need to regulate yourselves there and do the right things when branding and packaging and presenting responsibly dosed products. One of the huge reasons is, and why this is very relevant now, and you guys, it needs to be top of mind to you guys, is that in the year after rec went into effect in Colorado, so from January, I believe it's from January to December of 2014, there's some very, very interesting numbers that went along with rec. So initially, they were predicting that folks would stop, you'd have people sort of switching over to the rec market and abandoning their medical cards. That absolutely did not happen. And so the medical market has continued to grow. However, you had this new sort of wave of recreational cannabis consumers, a whole new market. And their consumption patterns were very unique as well. They were different. And roughly 50% of all the cannabis consumed in that period of time after rec went legal, roughly 50% were in the form of infused products. So that's where newbies, folks that are, the folks that are sort of coming back to cannabis, the boomers, and just sort of real light users that have now been seeing a lot of the medicinal benefits but haven't been spurred to go get a medical card. Those folks are going to start to come in. They're not smokers. They're not going to dab, more than likely. So they're looking for methods of delivery that are essentially more on par to like what they're used to. So edibles will be big. That will be a big part of the rec market, and it's really, really important that as an industry, we are sort of policing each other and being very, very judicious with how things are packaged and how things are essentially developed. I'm a big believer in responsibly dosed products, and I think that it would be very, very smart for us to sort of be very cognizant of potentially edibles being a hot button. That is something that can be sensationalized, and really I think, listen, everything is going forward. That's just one thing that I'm seeing that definitely mainstream media could latch on to. That's what they look for. And then really another thing I wanted to just touch on briefly was what we're seeing and the pickup. So we are, so when sort of the bigger aggregated publishers like your Yahoos and your Huffington Posts and sort of big boys like that, they're essentially portals and that aggregate content, a lot of times they'll pull content from us because we've sort of got that, it's as if it's coming from a mainstream, media company. So we're someone that they're used to. And so we notice the types of things that get picked up. On the sort of positive side, the advances and the things that are sort of lending themselves to the normalization of this industry is something that big media likes as well. And part of that is that right now you've got folks that obviously that are coming into the space that have had success in other businesses, where right now we're sort of trying to figure out how to work with each other. There's a big cultural component, but this is a business. So folks are coming in, investors are coming in. One of the things that media will definitely like and is liking are really breakthroughs with this industry starting to use the same sort of technology, just solutions that have worked in other verticals that are now coming here. So business-to-business software, social media is huge. It's actually I think the preferred marketing method in this sector. So doing innovative things with social media is a way to get positive coverage. And to that end, we are, as Alex mentioned, we have an event happening in late November in San Francisco that's really about kind of a narrow focus on technology and media in the cannabis sector. So you've got startups right now, and you've got concepts that are really disrupting the space. It's a very new industry, and at the end of the day, again, there are a lot of efficiencies to be gained. So, and I think anyone that operates in this industry knows that. So again, bringing technology, consumer apps, all that kind of stuff that happens in every other business, bringing that over here, that's a way to get some good press. So I'll leave some time because I think we've got a couple great stories after me. I'm just the mainstream guy, kind of boring. But anyway, that's my piece. And the name of the event in San Francisco, late November, is the New West Summit, which Alex mentioned yesterday as well. So thank you guys, and look forward to any questions after.
Dean Arbit from Smell the Truth, the San Francisco Chronicle, our mainstream media reporter on the media panel at the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference. I was a part of that panel as well. We played my presentation earlier in the week, but you can hear it up on my SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/radicalruss. We've built a playlist of all the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference audio, as well as the audio from every other event I've done so far this year. Check it out, the archives at soundcloud.com/radicalruss. Stay tuned, we've got an anti-drug public service announcement of the day, a double shot. We actually get some Run DMC followed by McGruff the Crime Dog, and then we wind things up with the Radical Rant, the truth about marijuana and driving.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. The Russ Belville Show, providing dictionaries to drug czars since 2009.
You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com. And follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter.
In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
What's up? We're Run DMC, and our rap's about something which there's no doubt. When it comes to drugs, just say no.
We've teamed up with the Drug Enforcement Administration and millions of people who won't fool with drugs. Not now, not ever.
Who wants to be involved with something that can rob you of your job, your future, your self-respect, your family, even your life? Nobody does.
That's why, where drugs are concerned, the only thing to do is just say no.
McGruff here with Regina to sing Users Are Losers.
You know it's okay to say no. I'm telling you it's true. Learning when to say no.
Say no.
That's what you need to do. Learning how to say no.
Say no.
Can make a winner of you. 'Cause users are losers and losers are users. So don't you
quit. Take a bite out of crime.
Users are losers and losers are users. So don't use drugs.
And help me take a bite out of crime.
America.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org.
420 Radio is brought to you by Sacred Serum, who is focused on creating elegant and sophisticated cannabis solutions through its line of dispensers and vaporizers that come preloaded with the world's finest cannabis concentrate. Sacred Serum's concentrate is made on pharmaceutical-grade supercritical CO2 extraction machines that use absolutely no butane or other toxic chemicals. The Vesica, the company's innovative new way to dab and frost, is now available in dispensaries across California. Sacred Serum, elegance and sophistication concentrated.
I have a package here for Radical Rick. Is there a Radical Rick here? How about a Rick Russ? Any Rick Russ? Somebody named Freddie Barack has sent him a package. Anybody? What is that? Smells like a skunk.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Herb Thrasher, and I've got a bong, and you're listening to 420 Radio.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make them.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
You've done it. I've done it. I've traveled all across America and witnessed scores of people doing it. In legal marijuana states, in medical marijuana states, and even in red states where doing such a thing can land you very serious prison time. We all say we're not supposed to do it, but many of us do it anyway. I'm talking about smoking pot and driving, and sometimes both at the same time. Half of the problem for us is that most of the public has not a single clue about the effects of marijuana. Less than half of us have tried it. Only 1 in 7 use annually, and about 1 in 12 use monthly. For those people whose experience with weed, if any, was a joint in a dorm room 30 years ago, well, they don't have much understanding of how we who consume marijuana on a regular basis can handle our high. For those people, alcohol and marijuana are things that impair you, and you shouldn't drive when using them. But most of that is driven by the perception of the belligerent drunk, slurring his words and stumbling through the parking lot, angrily proclaiming, "It's okay, I can drive, you guys, I can drive just fine." And then add to that a consistent refrain from our side to treat marijuana like alcohol. Tax and regulate marijuana like alcohol, and you can understand the public's trepidation about stoned drivers, especially when we haven't given them a marijuana breathalyzer so the cops can treat marijuana like alcohol. And the other half of the problem is that marijuana ain't alcohol. In fact, it's almost anti-alcohol. Think about it. Booze makes you mean. Pot makes you mellow. Booze is water soluble. Pot is fat soluble. Booze is man-made. Pot is natural. Booze is a poison. Pot is a medicine. Booze makes you puke. Pot cures nausea. And so on and so on and so on. And some people get this. Some people get this. They may tell you that you shouldn't drive impaired by anything, but if they had to make a choice, they'd ride in the car with the stoned driver before the drunk driver. Now, the reason for that is that marijuana, when it is impairing one's senses and reactions, it isn't impairing one's judgment. The drunk is not only too impaired to drive, his brain is telling him that he isn't Da-da-da! Liquid courage! But the stoner who gets too high won't really be that impaired, but his brain will tell him that he is. Numerous researchers trying to get test subjects high for driving tests often report that the subjects will refuse to get out on the driving course when they feel too high. And then the scientists have to push them into it. You got to. No, we want you to be that high and drive. Get in the car. Even if we do get behind the wheel feeling a bit of the effects of marijuana impairment, we overcompensate for it by driving slower, leaving more room between cars, and making fewer lane changes. The joke that says the drunk driver runs the stop sign while the pothead waits for it to turn green does have a kernel of truth to it. The other reason that frequent marijuana users will develop a tolerance to its impairing effects, not just compensating for impairment, but actually lacking impairment. Seattle's Como News produced a great demonstration of this when they got a 24-year-old medical marijuana patient named Addie Norton to consume marijuana to the point where she was at 56 nanograms of active THC per milliliter of her blood. 11 times the per se DUID limit in Washington of 5 nanograms. Before the drug recognition expert cop supervising the test and the driving instructor observing her said her driving was borderline. Borderline at 56 nanograms per milliliter. Now, you get to 11 times the 0.08 alcohol limit and you're borderline dead. Now, that 5 nanogram limit was set in Washington to allay the fears of nervous voters by giving them a treat marijuana-like alcohol equivalent to the 0.08 BAC. But it is a completely useless measurement because of that fat solubility thing I mentioned earlier. Alcohol, being water-soluble, is processed by our bodies in a dose-dependent, predictable fashion. Whether you're a jockey or a sumo wrestler, when you're at 0.08, you'll be markedly impaired. But THC, being fat-soluble, stores in your body. It releases every now and then, and in no way accurately correlates with your impairment. Addie Norton can drive okay at 56 nanograms. Maureen Dowd might be too messed up at 5 nanograms. It's highly variable from person to person and not correlated by dose. But that doesn't stop the drug warriors from trying to scare the hell out of the public, going completely against what the science actually says in doing so. Recently, the Rocky Mountain High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, an arm of the Drug Czar's office, released a report on the effects of legalization in Colorado. They claimed that marijuana users were 25 times more likely to die in a fatal crash. Of course, Project SAM, the anti-legalization lobby, for years has claimed that the British Medical Journal found pot smokers were twice as likely to be in a fatal crash. The truth? Well, the study that the Rocky Mountain High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Area cited actually said that drivers with THC in their system were 25% more likely to be in a fatal crash, not 25 times or 2,500% more likely. But then also, the researchers noted that the greatest amount and frequency of pot smoking is done by 18 to 25-year-old males. Guess who, even when sober, are statistically speaking the worst drivers on the planet? 18 to 25-year-old males. So when they corrected the data for age and gender, they found that THC drivers were just 5% more likely to get in a fatal crash, a value that is statistically insignificant because of the margin of error, than sober drivers. No more likely to get in a crash with THC in your system than sober drivers. Well, hooray, hooray, you're thinking, let's spark up a doob and hit the road. Well, not so fast, Dr. Thompson. Keep in mind that the study looks at people who died in wrecks and then determines if they had THC in their blood. Any THC in their blood. So, indeed, there are a whole bunch of dead drivers who might have had, say, less than 10 nanograms in their system and died in a wreck through no fault of their own. But there may also be some drivers who had, 100 or 200 nanograms in their system after doing a dab, who then died in a wreck because they were far too stoned to drive. In other words, just because the overall study says any THC isn't a good crash predictor, it doesn't say that too much THC in your system won't lead to a wreck. Now, personally, I don't think you have too much to worry about as far as wrecking your car if you toke and then drive. You're going to know how high you are, if you have any experience whatsoever, and you won't drive in a manner that should frighten anyone if you're too high. We trust that adults who drink can drive to a bar and then drive home if they aren't too impaired. That is, if they're below 0.08 blood alcohol. So why can't we trust adults not to drive too impaired by THC when it is so much less of a risk? But while you don't have to be afraid of wrecking your car because of toking and driving, I always strongly recommend that you never toke and drive. Not because you may be too impaired, but because traffic stops are the number one way cops have to bust you, and that weed smell will persist even if you roll down the windows.
They say marijuana grows like a weed, but growing high-quality marijuana takes more than just throwing a seed in the ground. Join us as we speak with the most recognized cannabis horticulturists in the world and take your live grow questions in our Cultivator's Corner.
Well, you know, I suppose they could say that alcoholics don't think straight too, can't they? Yes, sure. Surely. But another big difference in marijuana and alcohol is that when people smoke marijuana, they smoke it to get high. In every case, when most people drink, they drink to be social. You don't see people. That's right. That's right. See, they sit down with a marijuana cigarette to get high. A person does not drink to get drunk. That's right. A person drinks to have fun. If they smoke marijuana, you smoke marijuana. You want to get a charge. Right now, I'm sorry. You want to get a charge, flow, this and that and the other thing.
5 of the last 9 major party candidates to run for president, 3 of the last 9 vice presidential candidates, and the last 3 two-term presidents have all smoked pot. Marijuana, the gateway drug to the White House. This is the Russ Belville Show.
What I'm not going to be doing is using Justice Department resources to try to circumvent state laws on this issue, simply because I want folks to be investigating violent crimes and potential terrorism. We've got a lot of things for our law enforcement officers to deal with.
In terms of legalization of drugs, I think that the war on drugs has been a utter failure. And I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
All right, that's President Barack Obama, and pardon me for the the weirdness there at the end. For some reason, my programming was 2 minutes off of where it should have been, so had to fill. My apologies. But there you go. That Radical Rant is also available. It's up on hightimes.com right now, entitled The Truth About Marijuana and Driving. It also includes an embed of that KOMO driving test with Addie Norton, or as I like to call her, All Day Addie. That's all the time we got for our podcast hour, but if you're listening live, stay tuned. Hour 2 is next. Toker Talk Radio. The phone lines will be open at 844-207-2346. That's 84-420 Radio. For everyone here at Rolla J Studios in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it.
you'll see. You plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, smoke it, and it goes down smooth.